A Literacy Genre Presentation on Poetry by Jessica and Madison. There are unique characteristics of poetry, such as the structure the poem is written in. Stanzas are a group of lines that relate and are organized together to build on a thought or topic in the story. There are also line breaks, where each line of the text ends to create a flow or appearance of the text. More unique characteristics in poetry is the increased use of literacy devices. Rhyming words are used when words that sound the same at the end of the word are in a line or stanza. Alliteration is when the same sound at the beginning of the word is used in lines or stanzas. Rhythm is when the pattern of words create a beat when reading. And imagery is used when descriptive words create a mental image and appeal to the senses. Other literacy devices commonly used are onomatopoeia, when a word says a sound, such as bang. There is also repetition used when lines of phrases or words are repeated to stress importance or create further meaning. Similes are used to compare two unlike things, using the words like or as to make them similar. And metaphors compare two unlike things to make them identical without using the words like or as. A great example of a multicultural text for kindergarten first and second graders is Little Stevie Wonder by Quincy Troupe. This is the story of a blind young black boy from Michigan who grows up to be a musical genius. The purpose is to show the life of a boy who was differently abled in the 1950s, who was able to use the resources he had to spark imagination and express himself by creating music. His talent and music appealed to everyone, and quickly he became a star. This is relevant to students who are differently abled or from Black communities, as well as addresses the standard to learn about positive influences and contributions by African Americans. This is a poem because it tells a story through line breaks and stanzas using literary devices such as imagery, repetition, similes, rhythm, and personification. An example of a multicultural poem text is Navajo, Visions and Voices Across the Mesa by Shanto Begay. This discusses the different experiences and traditions of the largest Native American Indian tribe in the United States. The author and illustrator uses chants and stories from the ancient times, reflecting upon the different ways of living and his own experiences from childhood and his family. This is relevant to students whose families are Native American culture and addresses the standards of recognizing that Native Americans were the first inhabitants in North America, as well as the effects European colonization had. This is a poem because it tells many different stories through line breaks and stanzas, using literary devices such as rhythm, alliteration, repetition, imagery, simile, metaphor, personification, allegory, and rhetorical questions. Another example of a poetry text is Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. This text has a collection of different poems using various literary devices and stanzas. The book can be used in the classroom by finding a poem in the book to model and discuss before the lesson. This lesson will cover the standard in 4th grade ELA to discuss how rhyme and structure help develop meaning in a text. An example of a narrative poetry text is Yes, We Are Latinos by Alma Floreda and F. Isabel Campoy. This text is a great addition for a multicultural classroom and takes you through the different biases of cultures that can open up the floor to discussion about multiple cultures in the classroom. This may even be a great beginning of the yearbook to have a discussion about where everyone is from in your class and create a map showing each of the students' native homes. You could tie in many activities both about culture and poetry in this book. This book has use of multiple literary devices, but has abnormal structure for a poem. This is an excerpt from the text Little Stevie Wonder. Little Stevie grows into a sequoia tree of a man. He takes his inner vision, his words, his voice, and spreads joy and peace, telling everyone that we are the world and harmonizing ebony and ivory. He keeps growing with a smile bright as clear daybreak on his dark, luminous face. The words of his songs, now dazzling stars, shining diamonds in the night sky, like words of braille his fingers touch. An example of a metaphor in this text is the line, "Little Stevie grows into a sequoia tree of a man." The author is comparing Stevie to a sequoia tree. And the phrase is saying that the person that young Stevie grows into be as an adult is as strong and big as a sequoia tree. Now, the definition of man and sequoia tree are identical without using the words like or as, and that is why this is a metaphor. An example of a simile in the text is the line, "He keeps growing with a smile bright as a clear daybreak." The author is comparing Stevie's smile to a clear daybreak, saying that his smile is bright and it is similar to a cloudless sunrise. The author is making these two phrases similar by using the word as, and that is why this is a simile. Two higher order thinking questions that are text dependent on this read aloud are, as you read the rest of this book, are there any other examples of similes or metaphors? And what two things are being compared? Another question would be, what are the ways that Stevie's visual impairment helped him to become a musical genius? For the activity in class, we are going to be playing a YouTube video where the students are going to see a phrase, and on their whiteboards, they are going to write whether the phrase was a simile or a metaphor. The phrases in the video are from popular songs that most of the kids should know. As the phrase comes across the screen, the song will play as well. This will help engage and excite the students for the activity. Once the students write their whiteboards and hold them up to show the teacher whether they think the phrase was a simile or metaphor, the teacher will then select students to explain to the class what two things are being compared. For example, this is a metaphor comparing life to a highway. I chose this activity to allow the students to see the similarities and differences between a simile and a metaphor. I also want them to be able to understand how to see which two things are being compared in the literary device so that they can correctly identify this going forward when reading texts.